Jason Arday, the disgraced former Cambridge University professor, has been found dead. We haven't received confirmation yet, but it appears as though he made the decision to bring his own life to an end. This happened 9 days after he submitted his resignation letter to the University of Cambridge. So this news broke. It's been covered quite extensively. BBC, Sky News, Guardian, Telegraph, The Times. BBC. Tributes paid to Jason Arday after ex-Cambridge professor found dead, by Ruth Comerford. I mean, just look at this person's face. Does he seem like a serious academic to you? Tributes have been paid to Jason Arday, the former Cambridge professor, after he was found dead at an address in Battersea, South London on Friday afternoon. In a statement issued by his publisher, Simon & Schuster, UK, Professor Arday's family said they were in shock and to have lost an amazing father, partner, brother, uncle and son. They said a campaign of misinformation had been too much for him. So, of course, in the immediate aftermath of somebody's death, any decent person would choose not to put the boot in, don't kick a man when he's down. And obviously his family are devastated by the news, by what's happened. But at the same time, we should be vigilant against people trying to make him a saint and try to sweep under the rug all the things that he did. Campaign of misinformation. Well, what misinformation are you talking about? The fact that he was a fraud, when all's said and done, that he was a liar. He lied his way to get to his position as a professor at Cambridge University. Arday, 41, resigned as a Cambridge professor of sociology of education last week after allegations of plagiarism and questions about some of his achievements. He had denied the claims. The University of Cambridge Vice-Chancellor, Professor Deborah Prentice, led the tribute, saying the faculty was deeply saddened to learn of his death. Our heartfelt sympathies go to Jason Arday's family and friends at this incredibly difficult time. Education Secretary Lucy Powell said she was deeply shocked and saddened to hear about the death, and she urged the people to remember that there are real people with loved ones involved. Mayor of London, Sir Sadiq Khan, is among those who have said Arday was subjected to unrelenting media scrutiny. So we know that for a long time the media did not scrutinize at all. People who work in the mainstream media elevated him, they praised him. When an attempt was made to call into question his credentials and his achievements, Arday hired a law firm to try to intimidate this person. Sadiq Khan said Arday had faced an unacceptable public hounding and campaign of abuse. Of course, this is what Sadiq Khan, this is his classic tactic. Use these weaponized words. It's abuse. No, it's not. It's not scrutiny. It's not holding people to account. It's not reasonable criticism. No, it's abuse. How long until he brings up racism? Adding that he was the victim of a pernicious public shaming that other people in his position simply wouldn't have to face. Well, okay, let's take a look at that. Other people in his position wouldn't have to face. Other people in his position, as in Cambridge professors. Well, maybe that's because other people in his position did not have to lie to get to their positions and would not have been granted their positions purely because of the colour of their skin and because they ticked a DEI box, because the institution wanted to appear to be progressive and woke. We all know now that he was a poster child for inclusion, for DEI, and he was elevated to a level that he simply did not deserve, a level way beyond his ability and his competence and his intelligence. His death was a tragedy, but once again it should be a wake-up call for all of us. Wake-up call in terms of what? Reason covered this.
Jason Arday, the disgraced Cambridge professor who recently resigned, has been found dead. He was found unresponsive at an address in Battersea in South London, and he was pronounced dead there at the scene. Absolutely shocking. This comes as he was fulfilling diversity quotas because to the top of academia of Jason Arday, a guy who was able to rise to the top of academia because he ticked a box, because he was fulfilling diversity quotas, because he was everything Cambridge wanted, a guy who makes Cambridge look like they are not a place for the elite, that they are progressive, that they have people of colour. But listen, folks, it is probably the case that this is suicide. And what I would say is that Jason probably could have been saved if he was given the tough love that he needed and the honesty that he needed from his peers earlier on, rather than moved all the way to the top and had his, everyone telling him that his delusions and his fake achievements were real. They fed that delusion when they could have saved him, given him the reality check, and probably he needed the mental health support earlier on. It's the same. It's the same in the trans community, folks, where people who have serious insecurities, serious mental issues, are told, oh, this is amazing, diversity, inclusion, yeah, you can turn into a rabbit, no problem at all. People feed their delusions because it seems like the nice, inclusive thing to do. And the consequence is that mental health issues go untreated. If you love these people...
There are people who are responsible for this. So basically, to summarise, he was not a well man, he was a fantasist, he made up stories which were completely absurd. He was not challenged sufficiently. His claims were not scrutinised. He was picked out and used as a poster child to promote the concept of DEI and how wonderful it is. People being granted positions not based on their ability or their achievements, not based on merit, but based on the colour of their skin. And he got comfortable. He started to make up more and more fantasies and share them. He wasn't challenged. Finally, a whistleblower tried to shine a light on him. The whistleblower was targeted. Jason Arday hired an expensive law firm to try to silence this whistleblower. Eventually it all became too much. Also, I think the Met Police got involved. They investigated a journalist for investigating Jason Arday and his academic achievements and his PhD thesis, how much plagiarism there was. He was not a hero. The only reason that he was in his position was purely because he was black, and there was a system of box ticking over merit. He should never have been in his position to begin with. Okay, so here's some of the reactions. Here's what some people on Twitter are saying. This is Sangita Miska. The ideological right-wing racist media that hounded Jason Arday. Shame on you and your monstrous witch hunt. The 41-year-old was found dead at his home today. He was complicated, vulnerable, and at times reckless, but he was a human being. He didn't deserve to be treated as a fodder, to be treated as fodder in the culture war. He entered the culture war voluntarily. We know for a fact that he gave one of his students a low grade, and when she challenged it, he had the audacity to bring up that she was only complaining because of her white privilege. No university professors should ever do something like that. That was disgusting. That was disgraceful. To dismiss us, to bring in the race card like that. He didn't deserve to be treated as fodder in a culture war. Cambridge and the other institutions that benefited from his appointments must also hold themselves to account for their part in his story. R.I.P. Jason Arday, my condolences to go to his friends and family. Kristen replies, you lied about him, he lied about himself, and your DEI cult caused all of this. Congratulations, sociopath. Yep. It's important in this time that we do not let the advocates of DEI policies get away with what they've done. If it wasn't for that system, he would not have been given his position in the first place. They are responsible for putting in place the system that ultimately led to his own downfall. Eventually he was exposed, rightly so. His false claims were exposed, and the people who overlooked them and did not scrutinize him, you are the ones who are responsible. So the left, let's call them, they will try to twist this, of course. So we can't allow that to happen. We have to hold them to account. No, actually, you are the ones who are responsible for this. Take some responsibility for once for your actions. Alpha Eagle, you're more pissed about a lifelong fraud who fleeced people for status and money than British police letting a stab victim bleed to death because they thought he was racist. So that's a reference to Henry Novak, of course. Paul Turner, when the racist left put a fraudster on a pedestal because of the colour of his skin, everyone loses. Jason Arday has lost, Cambridge University has lost, and the students who study there have lost. No good will come from blaming the whistleblowers either. There are many flavours of racism and they're all bad. This problem will not end until the state, NGOs and the MSM and society become a meritocracy where we treat and measure every man and woman equally, regardless of the colour of their skin. Judge people based on the content of the character rather than the colour of their skin. Perfectly reasonable, but that has been lost in recent years. Sadie Sparrow. The whole DEI bullshit that enabled this to happen has to be torn out of every single thread of our society. Absolutely. Without it, this guy wouldn't have reached the position he held at Cambridge. He would have been turned away. Yes, DEI is actual racism, the very definition of it, in fact. That racism comes firmly from the left of the political spectrum. Absolutely, 100% correct. What a joke, says, he was a willing beneficiary of a culture war every step of his way to the top. His death is a tragedy, but make no mistake that he had so far to fall was entirely a situation of his and the left's making. A commitment to objective truth and meritocracy could have avoided this whole sad affair. Perfect, absolutely. A collection of screenshots. At 18, I could not read. Now I'm a Cambridge professor. Yeah, I find that very hard to believe. Bigger picture. Yeah, so it's Cambridge's youngest ever black professor. Yeah, just images of how the media promoted him. ESL learning is fun. What an absolute dullard. We didn't cause him to fake his way to the top. You wets on the left did that. His guilt from his dishonesty caused him to make the decision he made. If anyone is to blame other than him, it is the DEI wets on the left for promoting lies. American Kit Kat says, deep down you know the left caused this. I hope it keeps you up at night. Yep. Restoration 29 says, nope, there's no getting out of this and laying the blame. This is 100% on the left for using this guy for their own ideological ends. Sick. Sour Patch Mom says, you lied about him and enabled his lies. This became too much for him to bear, and expressing truth is not to blame for his ultimate decision. Shame on you. Molly says, Cambridge and the other institutions are to blame, not those who reported on the scandal. And yes, it basically was a scandal, which was bound to come out sooner or later. Among the worst was this guy literally tried to make it all about him and deconstruct how personally hurt and let down he was made to feel by Jason. Yeah, this one of the worst people on the planet. Kim Johnson MP says, where's she the MP for? Liverpool Riverside. Incredibly sad news. There are serious questions that need to be answered about the relentless media attacks Jason faced and the duty of care owed to him when he needed it most. Owed to him by whom? The duty of care owed to him by Cambridge? I mean, they protected him a lot. Media attacks. What media? Can you give some examples? Onwards and upwards. The woke left DEI lanyard wearers have blood dripping all over their beds tonight from their hands, promoting his lies to meet their agenda. Where's the lie? He was a victim not only of his own stupidity, but the utterly ridiculous DEI machine that massaged his ego, promoted him beyond his abilities, and worshipped at his feet. Let this now be the point at which we stop this utter nonsense. That's from Higgy. Yes, Higgy Bosun, Alpha Eagle. Yeah, if he was white, you wouldn't give a shit. The entire world sees the farce that is Britain. You propped up a mentally unstable, lifelong fraudster, then blame the media when it backfires. Where was your outrage when Henry Novak was allowed to bleed out? Yep. Houghton says, and therein is the problem with many on the left. Ignore his and Cambridge's lies. Ignore the police and lawyers sent to shut down criticism of their lies. Ignore academia's enablement of the whole sorry tragedy. Final Frontier says, what about the duty of care owed to the students who paid good money to have their education jeopardized by a charlatan? Jason Arday didn't. Because of the media, he self-terminated because the gig was up. Because the jig was up and he was looking at charges of fraud. Yeah. That is what a lot of people were calling for him to be charged with fraud. Marie Bell says, no, Cambridge need to answer serious questions. They elevated Jason to a position he could not sustain. We need to know why to stop this happening to someone else. What happened to Jason is not down to the media coverage of the story. It's on Cambridge that created this story. Yeah, he was not a real academic. Noel Clarke, the actor. What are you doing? I hope you're not defending this guy. They did it again. D-Dub says, you really don't believe in accountability, do you, Noel? Rich A says, this is terrible, but blagging the system like that isn't good either. The blame shouldn't be squarely on the media. He is to blame first and foremost for his own actions. Cambridge Union are to blame for not vetting him properly, and the media are to blame for magnifying the issues. Some of his former students have come forward and spoken about how much of a poor excuse for a teacher he was, how he would turn up to classes late, he would just sit on his desk, play music and tell the students to discuss the contents of the songs without giving any actual context or guidance whatsoever. Louis Luwu, whoever that is, a lot of folks saying this shouldn't become political, but the disproportionate hounding of this man was racialized and caused his death. This is extremely political, I'm afraid. So his appointment as a Cambridge professor in the first place was racialized. He only got the job obviously because he was black. That's it. And the media were all over it. Meet Cambridge's youngest ever black professor. Man who was compulsive liar and fantasist can't be criticised because he's black. Fuck off. Sorry chap. His appointment and then abandonment was the political aspect. Earl Great says, wow, you're just going to take all the wrong lessons from this, aren't you? And just double down on the racial grievances. What a fucking surprise. And who are the ones responsible for racialising the position Arday held? Cambridge University ticked that box, sunshine, nobody else. Arday's death is deeply tragic. R.I.P. Okay, this is a good one as well. The cesspit of Channel 4 News, and one of their lead anchors, Krishnan Guru Murthy, says, the disproportionate and bullying commentary and coverage of Jason Arday's mistakes has been obviously dangerous for days, yet it was a legitimate story, and in various ways a troubling one, but the relentless coverage, the vitriol and bile, the clip of a man talking about us needing more love in the world, endlessly mocked. Compare it to the way others who embellished and invented life stories or floated seemingly naive ideas are forgiven. Obviously, employers have duties of care, but spare us the pity of those who weaponize history for social media clicks without a thought. Oh, I don't even know where to begin with the hypocrisy on this one. Weaponize somebody's story for social media clicks. Oh, Krishnan, take a look in the mirror, mate. Bullying, well, once again, this is a tactic of the left. Any criticism, oh no, that's bullying, that's harassment, you're targeting me, this is assault. Christopher Talbot says, the fault lies with those who overlooked his lies, failed to check his credentials, and gave him a position he did not deserve. It was bound to come out at some point, and this is the result. Yep. Seb at Hockenheim says, you are one of the people who made him a public figure. At one point on your podcast, you appear to realize one of his claims is ludicrous, stating, but how is that possible, when he claimed he couldn't write until he was 18 and then went to university, but then dropped it. You failed as a journalist. This is partly your fault.
How learning to read and write and speak from the age of 11, do you get to university entrance at the same time as everybody else?
I went to university when I was 20. So I was very fortunate that I had a tutor at college named Sandro Sandri. You know, I went to university at 20, but had the reading age of a 9-year-old. You know, so you're trying to really kind of...
Really? I mean, is that possible?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, what is interesting is that there are a lot of mechanisms at universities to support people. And so when I went to university, a lot of it was trial and error.
How do you account for getting to that point where you got into university? Because that in itself is a huge achievement. Is that you being incredibly driven? Is that your mum? Really? I mean, is that possible?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Yep, hold the media to account, the ones who did not scrutinise, the ones who did not press, the ones who could sniff. There was just something not right about this guy, but failed in their duty as journalists to uncover the truth. So Krishnan Guru Murthy, do not for 1 second get on your high horse here, sunshine. Don't you even think about it. Virtue signaler. Dr. Shadrach says, for once in your pathetic life, tell the truth. Arday was the product of your disgusting identity politics, which Cambridge and leftists like you have promoted for years. Dory Gender Atheist says, you don't get to compulsively lie and blame others when the lies catch up with you. He clearly had mental health issues, and the DEI industry encouraged and affirmed them rather than leave him alone to find his own place in the world. Fair point. Speedy Cut says, weren't you one of the people who elevated him on your podcast? I'd sit this one out if I were you. Shameless. Yep. Perfectly fair point. Joey JB says, where was the same outrage and grief after an old lady was bludgeoned to death with a hammer? Yeah, it wasn't there. Anne Widdecombe. Anne Widdecombe was brutally murdered by a leftist. Good luck finding Christian's empathetic tweet about that. Disproportionate and bullying in comparison to who else exactly, specifically. Yep. Oh, who is this? Karam Kerr says, it's absolutely disgusting how sections of the British media, a predominantly white media establishment, hounded and publicly humiliated him. Well, Britain is still a predominantly white country. Can you get that through your thick head? Hounded him? No, holding him to account. He was a liar and a fraudster. And publicly humiliated him. Well, that's one way to describe it. If you think that exposing someone as having lied his way to a certain position is humiliation, well, that's your interpretation. Other people would just call it criticism and basically telling the truth. Why does scrutiny of a black academic over alleged academic misconduct become so intensely personal, racialized and dehumanizing? It was already racialized to begin with. He only got his job because the hiring process was racialized. He was a DEI hire. DEI is absolutely dangerous. It makes things worse. It ultimately causes death. DEI needs to be abandoned totally, permanently. No more giving jobs to people because of the colour of their skin or because they tick a diversity box. Stop it. It only makes things worse. And it's obvious to anyone with half a brain cell in their head. Peter Haig says, he built a public image on lies. Academia and media credulously accepted those lies and elevated him far beyond his abilities. If they hadn't made him a figure, the discovery of his fraud would not have been such a public interest story. Yeah, correct. Yeah. You made the bed. You're the ones who elevated him. You're the ones that made him a mini celebrity. Dawn Butler. The always reliable Dawn Butler. Let's see what her take is on this. I will not share my last exchange with Jason, but I hope that all who hounded him feel the weight of that every single day. And I hope that we wake up to what has happened and is happening. What is happening exactly, Dawn? Was this fair or disproportionate coverage? Tomorrow I'll say more. Well, how many other people have completely blagged their way to the position that Jason held? How many people received the praise that Jason received by the media who made him their darling, their poster child? Youngest ever black professor at Cambridge. Some of the lies that he told. Arday claimed that he once ran 600 miles between Edinburgh and London in 6 days for a charity, published on the 6th of August. Jason Arday has resigned from his post at the University of Cambridge, but the story rumbles on and new revelations about him emerge by the hour. The Spectator thought it would be useful to create a comprehensive relief, athletic prowess. Arday claimed that he once ran 600 miles between Edinburgh and London in 6 days for charity, an accomplishment which would put him in the upper tier of world ultra-marathon runners. He also claimed that he ran 30 marathons, that he had run 30 marathons in 35 days. 30 marathons in 35 days. Absolute fantasist. And people were too afraid to say, is that actually true? I'm not sure that's quite possible. Cowards. You gutless, pathetic cowards. You're disgusting. You enabled this fantasist to get away with it for years, to make him feel as though he was untouchable. On the 21st marathon, he suffered from an epileptic fit, and fractured his leg after falling down. This did not deter him, and he went on to finish the remaining 9 marathons with a fracture in his leg. Of course. And then he helped another runner who had fractured his leg by carrying him for the other 9 marathons, of course. And then everyone clapped. To this day, I don't really know how I did it, he recalled. Oh, what a liar. Arday claimed in 2024, speaking of engagement, that he raised over £5 million for charity from his marathons and that he raised over 5.5 million in his life. This is an extraordinary sum. Arday has said elsewhere that the money went most notably to Shooting Star Children's Hospices and Shelters. One Just Giving page shows Arday raising only £380 for one of his 300 miles in 3 days challenges. I knew somebody like this once in college, an absolute fantasist who made up stories, trying to appear to be so cool to try and impress people. And his real life was nothing like the stories that he told. God, some of the stories that he made up, they were entertaining. We used to laugh about them. This is the same kind of person. A Star is Born. Arday claimed that he was in the BBC documentary 7 Up. 7 Up was a television series that followed the lives of 10 boys and 4 girls in England. It began in 1964, more than 20 years before Arday was born in 1985. The BBC said that Arday had nothing to do with our films. Act Like You Belong. Arday has claimed that he was a visiting professor for Nelson Mandela University in South Africa, the University of Glasgow and Ohio State University, all of which have denied that he held such a position. According to the Daily Mail, Arday has also wrongly claimed to have a position as honorary professor at Durham University. The guy was just absolutely awful. Christopher Talbot responds to Dawn Butler. The fault lies with those who overlooked his lies, failed to check his credentials and gave him a position he did not deserve. It was bound to come out at some point, and this is the result. The Original Pagan says, the blame and shame lie totally with the people that hired a fantasist, people like you that think hiring on skin colour, disability and age makes you good at your job. If he was white, he would have been vetted. Don't blame us for your DEI fuck-ups. You people did this to him, not us. Texan constitutionalist says, blaming those who expose lies and fraud instead of those who enable them. Well, you're just a loyal little Marxist puppy, aren't you? Non-suicidally empathetic says, fuck off. He was a watered-down Vikram Digwa who used fake racism claims to try and get the police to arrest those looking into him. He was pathetic scum. Gunpowder Publishing says, you are more culpable than most in this tragedy. You push for this intersectional racism that promotes identity over talent, and when someone is caught out in their lie, you blame those who point out the lie rather than those like you who create the conditions for the lie. Absolutely spot on. It's a very sad story. The tragedy of Jason Arday, the incompetent fantasist who took advantage of a system that placed more importance on shallow identity rather than intelligence and ability. When his false claims were eventually exposed, the house of cards came toppling down. Hopefully this will mark the death of DEI, diversity, equity and inclusion, and it can finally be erased and eradicated from our society. There will be no more damage, no more lowering of standards, no more acceptance of substandard work or incapable people, incompetent people who don't possess the talent, the intelligence, the knowledge necessary to hold such positions. Let this be the death of DEI.